Imagine a man condemned by the gods, a man who spends eternity straining against a stone, every ounce of his strength poured into a task that will never be complete. Just as the gigantic boulder nears the summit, it slips away, tumbling back into the abyss, and then he begins again. This is the fate of Sisyphus, a king too cunning for his own good, who tricked even death itself and paid the ultimate price. Let's explore his story and see why it still matters. Long before his punishment, Sisyphus was the king of Corinth, then called Ephora, renowned for his cleverness and trickery. He prided himself on being the craftiest of men, outwitting fellow humans and even the gods. His mischief eventually went too far when he betrayed a secret of Zeus. He revealed that Zeus had abducted the river god Asopus' daughter. As a reward for this treachery, Sisyphus received a fresh water spring for his city, but he also earned Zeus's wrath. Deciding that Sisyphus must be punished, Zeus sent Thanatos, death personified, to chain Sisyphus in the underworld. Yet, when Thanatos arrived, the wily king saw an opportunity. Sisyphus feigned curiosity about the chains meant for him and asked Thanatos for a demonstration. The moment Thanatos obliged, Sisyphus sprang his trap. He shackled death himself. Suddenly, no one on earth could die while death was bound. For a time, humans and even animals stopped dying, disrupting the natural order. The gods were shocked by the chaos. Ares, the god of war, grew frustrated that battles yielded no fatalities, and Zeus realized this prank threatened cosmic balance. Sisyphus's cunning had overstepped its bounds. Finally, the gods intervened. Ares stormed in, freed Thanatos from his chains, and handed Sisyphus over to him. Sisyphus could cheat death for a while, but he could not escape fate forever. Thanatos, now furious and humiliated, dragged Sisyphus down to the underworld. Still, the king's story didn't end here. His cunning had one more trick in store. Having finally succumbed to death, Sisyphus found himself in the gloomy underworld, ruled by Hades and Persephone. But the sly king had prepared another ruse. Before dying, he had instructed his wife Merope not to perform the usual burial rites or offerings for him. As a result, when Sisyphus arrived among the shades of the dead, he had a perfect excuse. He approached Persephone, queen of the underworld, with a complaint. His wife had disrespected him by not giving him a proper burial. Playing the victim, Sisyphus persuaded Persephone that he needed to return to the land of the living just to punish his wife's neglect. Amazingly, Persephone believed his tale, or perhaps took pity on him, and allowed Sisyphus to leave Hades, but only temporarily. The moment Sisyphus was back in the sunlight of the upper world, he had no intention of returning to the underworld as promised. Reunited with life, he laughed at the gods once more and simply refused to go back. For a time, Sisyphus enjoyed life anew, smug in having outwitted even the queen of the dead. Of course, the gods would not be mocked a second time. When Persephone and Hades realized they'd been tricked, their patience ran out. This mortal king had twice undermined divine authority, an insult the gods could not tolerate. Hermes, the fleet-footed messenger, was dispatched to fetch Sisyphus. Hermes forcibly seized the renegade's soul and dragged Sisyphus back down to the underworld where he rightfully belonged. There would be no more escape. Sisyphus's final punishment was at hand, and this time the gods made sure there was no trick left to play. For his extraordinary defiance, the gods delivered a punishment just as extraordinary. In the depths of Tartarus, the most forbidding part of Hades' realm, Sisyphus was condemned to an eternity of useless labor. His task was simple in description and nightmarish in execution. He had to roll a colossal boulder up a steep hill. However, this was no ordinary rock. It was enchanted or cursed. Every time Sisyphus neared the hill's peak, exhausted and hopeful that his task was finally over, the enchantment would take hold. The boulder lurched from his grasp and thundered back down to the bottom on its own. All his effort came to nothing, again and again. Sisyphus would trudge back down the slope, aching and sweat-drenched, only to shoulder the stone anew and start the agonizing journey upward once more. There was never any possibility of success, a truly eternal punishment fitting his crimes. The gods had ensured that Sisyphus's cleverness could not save him this time. His own hubris, the belief that he could outsmart Zeus and cheat death, was now met with endless frustration. As the years and centuries rolled by, Sisyphus's plight became a legendary example of futility. Even Homer's Odyssey mentions seeing Sisyphus in the underworld, heaving with both arms at a huge rock, only to watch it roll back down before he could secure it at the top. In this endless cycle of effort and failure, Sisyphus the trickster was finally beaten. The man who once toyed with life and death was reduced to an eternity of meaningless struggle, watched over by impassive gods. Yet, within this bleak fate lies a powerful image, one lonely figure pushing his burden endlessly upward, embodying despair, but also a strange determination. Sisyphus does not give up. He cannot give up. His labor starts anew each time, a maddening loop that has captivated storytellers and artists for ages. His name would live on, synonymous with a task that is both never-ending and pointless, forever reminding mortals not to defy the will of the gods. The tale of Sisyphus did not end with Greek mythology. It endures to this day because it speaks to something universal. His name has become a byword for futile labor. In modern language, any endless, impossible task is often called a Sisyphean task. We immediately understand that to mean labor that requires ceaseless effort with no hope of success. How many times have we ourselves felt like we're rolling a boulder uphill in life? Sisyphus's eternal struggle is a powerful metaphor for the human condition. It symbolizes perseverance in the face of absurdity, and the idea of persisting even when victory is never assured. Philosophers and writers have drawn inspiration from this myth. Albert Camus, the French existentialist, famously reinterpreted Sisyphus's story in his 1942 essay, The Myth of Sisyphus. Camus saw Sisyphus as the ultimate absurd hero, a man condemned to a meaningless task in an indifferent universe, much like the condition of modern humanity. Yet, in a surprising twist, Camus concludes that one must imagine Sisyphus happy, and that the struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. In other words, the very act of striving can give life meaning, even if the struggle seems pointless. This uplifting interpretation suggests that Sisyphus, in continuously pushing his rock, rebels against his fate and finds purpose in defiance. Beyond philosophy, the story still resonates because it challenges us. Would we continue pushing? Sisyphus's resilience can be seen as a form of hope or stubbornness that many of us relate to. Every day, people engage in repetitive or challenging work, whether it's pursuing long-term goals, daily routines, or facing setbacks over and over. Sisyphus reminds us of human perseverance. His punishment may be extreme, but it magnifies a feeling we all know: the frustration of seeing our efforts undone, and the courage it takes to start again. Finally, Sisyphus's story has inspired countless works of art, literature, and culture through the ages. From ancient vase paintings, like the one above, to Renaissance paintings by Titian, to modern works by artists such as Franz von Stuck, the image of Sisyphus struggling with his boulder captivates us. Writers from Homer to Kafka to Camus have all found meaning in his tale. Each retelling or reference is a testament to the timelessness of this myth. We continue to talk about Sisyphus because on some level, we are all Sisyphus. Each of us sometimes feels the weight of a personal boulder that we must push against, again and again. And in understanding his story, we find insight into our own. That is why, thousands of years later, the story of Sisyphus still matters. It's a cautionary tale about arrogance and punishment, but also a profound symbol of endurance and the search for meaning in our struggles. Sisyphus's eternal labor prompts us to reflect on how we face our own challenges. Do we succumb to despair, or do we keep pushing with determination, perhaps even finding moments of joy in the effort? In the end, the myth of Sisyphus endures not just as a story of a man punished by the gods, but as an image of life itself. The endless climb, the inevitable fall, and the choice to begin again. It reminds us that even when a task feels truly Sisyphean, there is value in how we approach it. That message is as relevant now as it ever was, which is why Sisyphus, the king with the boulder and the unbreakable will never be forgotten. You've been watching Great Myths Explained. If you enjoyed this journey, please like the video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next myth, legend, or timeless story. Until next time.